No, no, it's fine.
Yeah, there we go. Very tricky.
Okay.
It's very
So,
yeah.
so we're going to be talking about consciousness, right? Conscientiousness. We have lots of words that are in the very Semitic field, like awakening, right? Awareness, raising awareness, being mindful, being conscientious, right? And I've chosen this one is a little bit bigger, and you're going to see why, right? Because it's more a permanent state of, it's not glimpses of awareness, right? And basically what we're going to be doing here is to see how consciousness or conscientiousness, which is going to be in a deeper level, it is something that has to do with this movement coming from dark into light, right? And I'm going to be working in the two levels, not only the individual one, being aware of all his potentials and weaknesses and strength and development, but also in terms of civilization, right? Because whenever we develop something inside, we leave it as well as legacy. So there is also a conscientiousness approach when you think of certain individuals in humanity throughout the history leaving precious stones for us. Okay, this is the reason why that I'm going to be starting with a philosopher, Plato, and Socrates, Plato. They are mentioned in the introduction of the Gospel, right? With more emphasis in Socrates than Plato, but I'm going to be putting the whole emphasis here more in Plato than in the master Socrates. And also, Plato was the master of Aristotle. So this triangle here, they have left lots of things for us that has been regained and developed either by the very same in different bodies or their disciples. Because this process of developing conscientiousness is not only I myself, my being as individual coming back and regaining and developing further, but also for those who were in my surrounding, in my inner circle, that joined the very same idea and developing in the Father and the Master. Okay? So, basically it's from darkness to light. And we're going to see that in humanity, the approach of matter and spirit in the very beginning was opposing matter and spirit. And in our phase with Spiritism, we no longer go in opposing, but we go hand in hand. Matter and spirit. It's not necessarily the approach of clashing, but even collaborating. Because we state a lot here in our studies that matter is the means for me to develop the spirit. Right? So my body and the circumstances that are physical, they are tools for me to. So I cannot look at them opposing, but getting them together and continuing this process of awakening awareness, developing and keeping it more for longer. Now, basically, humanity has been with this dichotomy, matter and spirit, sometimes approaching as opposing, sometimes approaching as alliance. And Plato, just for us to place ourselves, Greek philosopher, 500 years before the Christian era, before Jesus Christ, and he died on the 4th century. And it's very funny because he himself is going to be spreading the seeds that Kardec is using in the introduction of the Gospel. Okay? So, basically, he was a teacher of Aristotle, and he found an academy of a trend of thought. And we're going to be analyzing one anchor of this trend of thought. That is the allegorical approach to cave. Right? The allegory of the cave. We're going to be seeing what it means. And we're going to be seeing later that this has been somehow got back and developed by the Spiritism doctrine as well. Okay? But the very seed was there. Is that okay? Now, this guy was the one that the first time started saying that there is an ideal world, not ideal, the perfect one necessarily, but the world of ideas with different level of perfection until going to the supreme perfection that we call God. Right? But there is a world of idea and there is a world of materialization of idea. So at that time, he already said in Republic, in his book, that whatever we have here is a replica, fading replica always there. Which sometimes we state as if it were something coined by spiritualism. But it's something that was taken by spiritualism again and developed further. Okay? So whatever we talk about beauty, truth, has been developed in an idea, world of idea, and is being materialized for different people, the very same individuals that reincarnate. Is that okay? Now, this guy, we're going to go to the allegory here. The first thing is, for people to understand, as Jesus used parable, he used just as this allegory. Allegory is a metaphor. Just speaking figurative language for people to visualize something and perpetuate it, being very easy to tell later. So what is behind it is a philosophy, but there is a story, and this story is an allegory, like an archetype. So he says that there are two kinds of people, basically. The one that learns through the senses, they're very empirical, and they are limited by the very senses, and the one that goes through philosophy. Their flight is higher and broader in encompassing, because transcend the senses which is pertaining to the matter. Right? And he's saying that in this theory, I'll go a little bit here. And this is for you to imagine. There is a cave. In this cave, there are prisoners. And this prison cave is underneath, right? Mm-hmm. And the prisoners, they were there since when they were born. So they have never been experienced to out of the cave. Okay? These prisoners, they have their hands and their legs tied, as well as their head. They could not do this or that or turning back. So they were really stuck in a position. They were completely tight. In this cave, let's assume that that's a cave. The sun of the light is there, sunlight, right? The light of the sun is there. And we are sitting on here, and we are tight. Between the sun and we, there is a bonfire, a fire pit. There is fire. And between fire and we, there is a pathway. In this pathway, those who were outside the cave, they could enter. They walked the pathway, which means that they crossed before the bonfire, that intensified the light of the sun that was there, almost hidden in the cave. And all of us prisoners, tied hands and legs and head, what we could see was the shadow. Okay? This was the basic of the story here. And there was, this is, if you could imagine like this, just for to see the shadow and people sitting down there. But your imagination far better than a picture of a picture reduces, right? So, these shadows, they were cast by what people carried in their hands or on their heads. So if I bring here a lamb, or I wouldn't say a camel because I'm not going to be carrying a camel, but a lamb or a pot or any other fruit, all of us here prisoners, we see the projected image, but we don't see the very object. And what we see, it is either magnified or distorted because it's a shadow. It is different if I could see it in the sunlight. Is that okay? And there was also among them again saying that we should be guessing what is the image that's going to be coming after the last one. Okay? So that was the way that these poor prisoners, they could entertain themselves, right? They were taught at least to exercise their imagination, but their imagination were tied to the senses as well. Okay? Because what they could grasp of reality is empirical. Okay? Sometimes they could shout or cry something, right? assuming that I get a lamb and I do the lamb a little bit diagonal, but I say, bah, bah, right? So even though the shadow is not so much clear, but oh, that is a lamb. So there are this kind of similar. Is that okay? Now, so this is what the game here is explaining. And the prisoner that could guess correctly, he was considered the master. He has the truth. He was the one that decoded what was behind. And everybody, oh, right? And once he was named the master, by definition, there was a paradigm, a table of reference set, and everybody started looking the reality through him. Okay? And remember that he was a philosopher. So by explaining to disciples, among them Aristotle, he started asking what is the symbology here, to see if there are more than one or two opinions. And also to flexibilize perception, to say that not everything that we see, we touch, and we hear is reality. And even if it is reality, it's not the total reality. Right? Remember that he said that there is the world of idea. So he was trying to enlarge people's perception and say that what you call nature includes also the ideal nature. So he enlarged the concept of nature. The same as Spiritism enlarged the concept of nature, because we are working with phenomena that are invisible, intangible. So he brought to the equation. We are talking about 500 years before Jesus Christ. Right? And there are millions of people that they have not yet grasped this message. Mm-hmm. They are still reduced by what I see is what is real. Mm-hmm. They never question how I see it, or which are behind me, the pathway, or the bonfire that is distorting my lens. Is that okay so far?
Yeah.
Okay. So, one of the prisoners came, right, from their bindings, and this guy, he leaves the cave. He's shocked when he saw that what he discovered outside was complete reality. And say, well, they're far more than this, or far less than this, because they magnified, or it is not as precise, as acute as this. What happens to science? What happens to us with all these studies, etc., right? Because the more we study, the more you dedicate, the more effort, the more we observe, the more we go through experience, with our consciousness, right, is enlarging to grasp reality. Are we going to be grasping 100% of reality? Never. Because when we grasp it, we are the supreme, omnipotent, omniscient, and omnipresent that we name God. Is that okay? And then he's shocked, and he becomes used to his new surroundings. He realized that his former view of reality was wrong. Oh, what I thought was wrong. This is the right thing here, right? And he begins to understand his new world and sees that the sun that he was prevented from seeing, because even the bonfire was a fragment of the sun reality, right? So he said that the sun is a source of light, and he goes on an intellectual journey where he discovers beauty and meaningful life. So he's telling his students like this, not as I'm telling, but in a way that was pertaining to that. Right? Yeah. Now, he sees that his former life and the guessing game they play is useless. He said, oh, how much time I start there, prisoner of all these senses, of all this discussion, and who perceives, who sees better, who hears better. But this is far bigger than that. So we were wasting our time being prisoners in the cave. Is that okay? Good. Now, he returns. The prisoner returns to the cave to inform the other prisoners of his finding, right? He was enthusiastic and saying, well, people, there are far more there in reality than here. They do not believe him and threaten to kill him if he tries to set them free.
Wow.
So here we have we have a free will. I'd like to continue being a prisoner. I'd like to continue being in the cave, right? many reasons. Perhaps I don't know how to deal with the other reality. Or perhaps I'd like to be adjusted and conforming to this one here better, what I know than what I do not know. Right? Or perhaps my sense of solidarity and companionship was here. They're going to be by themselves, not alone. So what is this person that has discovered the reality and say that reality is this? So it's dangerous somehow. There are many, many reasons for that. But he's trying to make people thinking 500 years before Jesus Christ. Okay? Now, in this, the cave, it is our dark zone, or the society's dark zone, that are set by a paradigm. My paradigm, if I'm not open to interaction with other paradigms, and if I'm not open to continue studying, observing, and questioning myself, and going back when I'm in the spiritual world, going back to see how it was, my paradigm is going to be a cave. It's going to be formatting me and preventing me to see light. So cave was that, right? The shadow was the distorted perception. You say not all that you see is as you see. Huh? Okay. The scape means the one that starts to liberate. We in spiritualism, you know that when we die, our soul liberates. Because the body by itself may be a possible cave that is imprisoned me. For me to deal with difficulties, I have to exercise some kind of to get the virtues, right? Mm-hmm. So perhaps I'm exercising here patience and tolerance. I'm exercising here facing my ambition has been cut down, or I'm exercising that the perception that I have of myself, my self-esteem should be worked. So there are many things that I have been working here. So this is the symbolic approach to the allegory. When I escape and I get the liberty and I saw reality in a broader, and I'd like to bring people and their reaction not to come with me perhaps weakens me. Or perhaps I see the danger. Let's assume that after being here for 5 years, 7 years, all of a sudden I have to be in the crowd showing a different perception. I'm going to be an innovator. I'm going to be threatening beliefs of the case. People may stigmatize me, ignore me, or they may even be against me. Right? Jesus was a very good example of that, because he was trying to say, right, what Moses said, or what kind of God you have, or this is, your kingdom is in this cave, but there is another kingdom. So he's trying to enlarge, but he ended up being like Gordon. Okay? This is very common. Now, what is the caveat, the downside in Plato's when we study philosophy? Because he was giving to humanity, giving to humanity, giving to humanity, but there was a point that became feeble, as every human being, right? He put so much emphasis in the world of idea that he minimized the importance of the physical thing, which Spiritism is going to be bringing back and say, you have to work with this body, you have to work with this brain. This body, this brain is a result of an organizer principle called perispirit that is making the bridge to you with the one big world, which is spiritual, which is your home. So Spiritism is also telling us that we are put into caves. Well, are we going to be in caves forever? No, because the only dogma, if you may call that, everybody has to get the light. It depends on how long. Right? So the higher you go, the more we see, the less cave we're going to have. Okay? So he put these two emphases so much in these opposing forces that he lost the link that other people in the history, in the collective consciousness of humanity, they're going to be grabbing the link and putting together and developing later. Is that okay? Mm-hmm. We're going to see this development going on. We're going to see Emmanuel saying things. We're going to see André Louis saying things. We're going to see Francisco Xavier through a guy that is not so much mentioned here, the one that is here in this book. Right? Male, Lucio. Okay? So these are the people that restored the link and started coming back. Is that okay? Now, perhaps our conscious, our first awakening, our first awareness raising happened one day when I, as a being, I realized that the material part finished. So why should I ask, where do I come from and where do I go, if I do not experience the situation of seeing what is physical, sensorial terminate? So this question, where do I come, where do I go, I need to have a termination of the sensorial experience for me to go beyond it. Otherwise, I'm going to ask this question. Right? Now, if we see like this, we're going to see 3 slides. Let's go this way here. If I am a really, really down to earth, I do not think that there is a spirit, forget spiritism, forget communication with spirit. I don't believe there is a spirit in me. Period. I am matter. So I am my ego, my body, my space, my time, and my circumstance. I was born here and there I finished. There was no before and no after. This is what I believe human being is. In this case, what is wrong and right, it doesn't mean this person doesn't think of wrong and right. This person thinks of wrong and right. But there are cases, community versus community. What's right in this country may not be right on the other country, on the other side of the world. Maybe between 2 individuals. It may be with myself. I'm struggling to find this answer, what's right and wrong. Until I come to the sense of, do you know what? There is no paradigm. Everything is chansical. Everything happens. So, why I'm happy today? Because I'm happy today. There's no reason for that. Why I'm sad today? There is no reason for that. Right? So, this is a very common way. And for me, death is an end. Is that okay? Now, we're going to go to the second point, which is those who believe that there is something before, something that we call self that is immortal, and something, and I know that I am here, born, I was born here, I died there, but I believe that I continued. I believe that there will be a final judgment. And this final judgment is going to be saying, you're going to be rewarded or you're going to be punished. But there is a final judgment. Death is not my end. Is that okay? Now, and I go back. Plato used to say that when you finish, we go back and then we come back. Because Plato, the philosophy, they believe in dematerialization and materialization. He didn't have the concept of perispirit, organized, all this stuff, but he believed in materialization and dematerialization. Right? So there are more possibilities here. And we're going to go to the third level, which it is very similar to the other one, but to me, death of the body, it is the liberation. There will be sorrows, which is punishment, if you like to call it. Right? There will be joys here or in the back, let's call it reward, whatever you call it. And I believe that I go this way here. Whenever I do this circle, it's coming back. I'm not talking only about spiritual. There are other reincarnationist theories. But when I go back, it is ego and self-talking, and it is, I think it's missing one thing here. No. Yes. And it's not a final judgment. There are intermediary self-judgment. So it's not somebody that is going to be rewarding or condemning. It is myself with my conscience that will be reiteratedly exercising that. And that I do not need death to start thinking. During my presence here, between these 2 dates, I can exercise this process of analyzing and judging. There are people that they prefer to be in the cave until when death occurs. But there are people that they are studying, they are observing, they say, I'm still egocentric, I'm still jealous, I'm still a controller, and I have to change on this, and I look for many, many things, maybe other sciences, but I try to improve myself, right? What comes with the spirit is this component here, right? I put it here to say that this is the connection between the two. And if you see it, it gets lighter, and it gets this way here. The closer I get to the pure spirit, there will be an envelope that is no longer called perispirit. But Kardec is very clear when he says that perispirit is semi-material and semi-immaterial, vaporous, right? Ethereal, right?
That's a quick question. What is tetragrammaton?
I'm going to go there, right?
Oh, thank you.
Now, this is possible because we are coming from a monotheistic approach of the universe. There are no longer many, many gods fighting among themselves. In hierarchy of beings, there is a supreme being. This supreme being that we know is coming from the Hebrew society. And this supreme, in Hebrew there is no name for God. You do not name God. Because if you name God, you're already framing it. So there is no word. There are thousands of ways of mentioning God, but there's not a specific word of God. Right? And one of them here is the tetragrammaton. Tetra is 4. Grammaton is letter. And on is permanent. So if you see there, we have 4 Jewish letters. The first one like this is similar to apostrophe, yod. Right? The second one is hey. The third one is wav. And hey again. And this is I am what I am, this 4 letter. This is what is called Yahweh. Javeh, Jehovah. So Yahweh, in Hebrew there is no vowels. Right? When you write with consonants and diacritics. Right? So these 4 words, if I get the first letter, I am what I am, it is a tetragram. And that is when the word Jehovah was coined, because it's Yahweh. At the same time, it's a verb in Hebrew. This is the verb to breathe in and breathe out. Have you ever seen pictures that God is blowing, passing the energy? We may call the cosmic, universal fluid, whatever, magnetic fluid, vital fluid, blah, blah, blah. Right? But this is it's an onomatopoeic word. It's imitating the sound. So when it comes to the death of my body is expired. There is no more vitality. Okay? So we are under this. So our sun and the prisoners that have left our caves, they have already got this paradigm. It is monotheism. It is supreme. Whatever you think of adjective is infinite. And whatever you see on this world, since Plato, is materialization of this big thing. Okay? And this process of coming back and going is toward perfection. And what is communicating by the Spirit is going to become more and more etherealized, like quintessence, right? Quintessential, and going this way. Is that okay?
Yeah.
It's just for us to visualize with flash, with arrows, etc. Now, in the Spirit's book, we have a question that is over there, 1017. And this question is followed by an answer, and then Kardec comments. This question is because the Spirit, they said, some of them said, where are you now? I am on the 4th and the 5th heaven. And Kardec said, but is there 4th, 5th, 7th heaven? Right? And the Spirits, they implied saying, it depends on your level of purification. It depends on your level of vibration. I'm not in your world, I'm out of your world, but there will be levels here according to how high and how broad my virtue exercise upon my perispirit. Until the perispirit is turning for something that Kardec itself, the Spirit said, at this point, we don't know. There is an envelope, but we don't know what is the envelope of a person. It is written in the scripture. Okay? Now, forget comments. Thus, we can say that we can carry our health our heaven within ourselves. So, Kardec, what he's saying here, interpreting the spirit, is there is no place so circumscribed in time and space that the spirit will stay. Everything happens in the conscious side of it. And then we come, what about the umbral? What about the nosular? Right? Remember that this is one perception of one prisoner called the Luis that he escaped. Right? He saw and he's reporting. Is it the total truth, 100%? What about the other people that went there? And are revealing in several manifestations. Right? So this is one perception. So what I see in my mind, the closer I am to the earth, the spiritual world will be almost a reflect of. Is it new? The Greek people, they had a God for each feeling, each thought. Right? So how I project, it is what is plasmatic, materialized there. So whenever you read the description, it is his perception and his suffering. But he's suffering, but he no longer has blood. Okay, we are going to go to the theoretical answer of sensation spirit to this question here. 2.5 pages that is going to be saying that everything is in our mind, and our mind may be attached or departed from the matter. The close it is to the matter, the more pictorial is the real. There will be ministry, there will be secretaries, there will be cars, there will be vehicles, whatever. Right? Perhaps if the narrative was from a person that has not gone through umbral, has gone to a higher level, or even a higher level of community, perhaps it would be different. So I cannot see and generalize and stem that everything's like this. Okay? This is fraction of reality, like a beam of light. Is that okay? So he's saying here. Now let's go. If we go to the Gospel according to the Spiritism, chapter 4, we have this sentence here, right? When we are talking about current cause of affliction, let all those who are stricken in their hearts by life's vicissitudes and disappointments calmly examine their consciousness. So this is going to be one of the successive self-judgment or analysis. Right? Let them go back step by step to the source of the misfortunes that afflict them and see whether they would not often say, if I only had or had not done this or that, I will not be in such conundrum. Conundrum is this: a very puzzled situation, a confusing situation, an enigma in my life, something that's asking me to think twice, giving me anxiety, etc. Okay? But it is not in the physical or time reality, it is inside what's happening here. Okay? Let's go. Then, if we go back to the Spirit's book, in these two questions, it's going to be say, okay, but what about all these sort of difficulties, this conundrum that you've been going through, if you repent yourself? What's the effect on the material side and on the spiritual side? Because I can repent myself here, I'm incarnated. I can repent myself after passing. And there will be two answers here. Taken from the Spirit's book. The Spirit's desire of a new incarnation in order to purify itself. Oh, so this is a process of purification. That's why the perispirit gets purified and going to the pure state, the whole process, right? Becoming more and more angelical. And it comprehends the imperfection that has kept it from being happy, and it aspires to a new existence. All the things that we said with the reincarnatory plan, and I'd like to come back, there's an opportunity, that may be a possibility for a test or a possibility for more than a test, an exhibition. Okay? And what's going to be happening in the corporeal state, advancement while in the present corporeal life. So if I revise, if this successive self-judgment, this desire to improve, it is still here, I'm going to be improving and becoming more angelical. But there is also there, if there is time for you to do so. Because sometimes when we start doing it, it's too late. But is that okay? This is the answer as the state of consciousness, right? Now, we have here, repentance is not only the only thing, it's the first step. And the Spirit spoke it. And the teaching that we have, we need repentance, we need expiation, we need reparation. So the very fact that I repent is an advancement, but it does not erase. So there are things that I do in my life. This is how we go, right? We repent, expiate, and repair. And there are things that I go in my life that I may be wrong. There is a fault, but not necessarily is a case of expiation. Whenever there's a case of expiation and repair, it's because I'm touching others. I've broken the harmony of the world. But I'm not going to only repair the things that touch others. There are other faults that I have to recover myself, to redo my history. And in the Spirit's book, they say that there are 5 ways of doing that. Causes that do not affect direct or indirect others. We may be how? By doing in subsequent incarnation what he thought, human being, man, to have done, but did not do enough. Oh, I haven't done that. It was part of communication. Or, second part of it is discharging a duty. Whenever you discharge a duty, it means that you do everything possible related to this task. I'm going to be discharging the duty that I neglected, and I did not see it as incumbent to me. I thought it was somebody else's job. Okay? Another way I can do that is fulfilling missions that I failed. Perhaps I was designed to be a teacher. I'm designed to be a person leading social work, but one part of my life I thought, you know what, I'm going to be lacking money. I do need some safety, and I'm going to be getting this role here and come back to my inner mission when I'm retired. Perhaps I didn't reach retirement, but I think of this, right? And by practicing the virtue, which are the opposite of the vice. So he gives examples, right? Being humble, if you're very haughty, very snobbish. So just practicing the opposite. We know by intuition and repetitive mechanism of instinct which were our vices. Because we are not 100% pure. We are still in this way of purifying. So once in a while, this is going to be flourishing. An idea of stealing something, an idea of betraying something, or I don't know why, but I lied this time. Why did I lie? Perhaps it was reminiscences that I had to. Okay? We are getting there. Now, Joanna the Angelus, she's going to be putting another component. She got all this, okay, it's very good that you're going to be growing, you're going to be coming back, you're going to be improving, you're going to repair, you're going to expiate, etc., etc. But you're going to be doing that harshly, you're going to be punishing, you're going to be torturing yourself and others. She puts another component here in the link. We haven't talked about love so far. I'm just talking about the mechanism, as if you're like a clock. Right? And she says, apply yourself to wholesome reflection regarding your deficiencies in order to correct them. In your good qualities, do not think that you got there, because you still have to enhance them. And she's going to be saying, use strictness without harshness. Being strict, but not being harsh. Right? In love without sentimentality, set out in the pathway of balance of growth. Loving yourself means perfecting yourself spiritually, emotionally, and physically. If I'm only worried about my spirituality and I continue disrespecting my body, okay, perhaps I'm in the cave yet with some biting and I haven't perceived that I have to go 3 ways here. Or perhaps I'm perfecting myself intellectually, I'm perfecting myself physically. I've got many plastic surgery, I've got many Botox, I've become far better than when I was born. I corrected my nose, but I'm still anxious, but I'm still depressed. So I have to touch this point, right? and do it with love. Now, every day by setting new guidelines and promising targets, you reach them. This is lowercase, by being generous, active, persevering in good work. In the reading of Ricardo, it's saying that you're going to be working, persistent, devoting it, right? Devoting yourself to struggle with this material world. So there is an effort discipline here, even to improve the qualities. Because if I get accustomed to one quality, I'm going to believe that I am sufficiently enough generous as God. Or I'm as merciful as God. Is that okay? Now, this one here, I like it a lot. This is Emmanuel talking to us. We're approaching almost the end, but still have like 10 minutes here. Emmanuel's going to be saying in this book, the Astral City, he's going to be saying surprise, perplexity, and doubt are normal for students who have not yet completed all their lessons. We haven't completed our lessons yet, right? Such is more than natural. It is really only fair. That's why John is saying, do not be harsh. Right? And then he continues later on saying, what is essential is that we acquire an understanding of our infinite potential. It's going beyond the cave. Right? And that we use it in the service of the good. Oh, another component coming here. It's not only about your development. You're not going to be reaching there if you do not help people to develop themselves. This is the principle of cooperation. Otherwise, you're going to be very egocentric, very ambitious, and very vanity. I'm just before myself. You're going to be having time. So far, you're not there yet, intellectually, morally. You're going to have time. And I'm not sharing. I'm not helping. I'm not showing. I'm not modeling, because you're going to be getting there by yourself. Right? This is a very comfort zone. Right? And he's going to say, Earth human. Oh, there are human in other parts, right? Earth human are God's children, engaged in constructive labor and clothed in flesh. They are students attending a worthwhile school where they must learn to evolve. The human struggle is their opportunity. Oh, love, good. Oh, there is an opportunity now here. He's adding the link. Their tool in their textbook. So everything that happens to us, every people that are in our life, every circumstance that I deal with, everything that I got, maybe lottery, maybe a great job, it is my textbook. Right? And then we are going to be thinking, okay, this is going to be our white paper. Right? This is going to be the paper that we're going to be used with our own authority to see what I'm doing with my surprises. Right? What are my perplexities in this life? What are my doubts? Because the thing is not only to read the text, I have to interact with the text. I have to bring to life the letter, right? So, what are my struggles now? What am I struggling with now? Is it a loss of a job? Is it a difficulty in my marriage? Is it a conflict in my family because among the heirs, right? The heritage? And what's the opportunity? What's the tool? What's my textbook now? So he's very didactic. He's very clear to us. Have we already acquired an understanding of our infinite potential, or are we still in the cave? Right? Have we been actually using them in the service of the good? The best way of dealing with this question is, what do I do in my free time? Okay. We pack our days with all duties and work, right? What do I do in my free time? Am I only watching Netflix? Am I reading a book with somebody that doesn't know how to read or cannot read? Right? Am I doing the supermarket list for somebody that cannot leave home because he's in a wheelchair? So, if we don't have much in this list, it's because we are not yet out of the cave sufficiently. Right? Am I sometimes serving? Or it's a once in a blue moon, once in a month, or once in a year that I do something that demonstrates that I'm dedicating time, energy, money, whatever. Okay? That's why we say, let's list here. And also when you're talking to God in our prayer, let's list what I have acquired. Right? I've noticed that I've been less ambitious. Thank you for providing the opportunity to exercise my ambitions. Oh, today I've seen that I'm still egocentric. There was a discussion in the Spirit Center, and I had to say something. People didn't listen to me, and I repeatedly saying it until the end. And people didn't like to listen to that, but I need to say it, okay? But this is just here. So, and let's see here, this is also Andrea Luiz. He's saying that life never ceases. Life is an eternal fount, and death is only an obscure game of illusion. And he says, it would be extremely childish to believe that the mere lowering the curtain, because, the theater is over, the play is over, that's death. So it would be childish to believe that lowering the curtain could settle the transcendental questions concerning the infinite. And then he goes, and I'd like you to really feel this word, because I love his word here. This is the introduction. One life, one act, like theater. One body, one garment. One century, one day. One task, this is one experience, not all the experience. One triumph, this is one acquisition. One death, one breath of renewal. In his questions, how many lives, how many bodies, how many centuries, how many tasks, how many triumphs, and how many deaths do I still need to get to the angelical point? Right? And he says, may the Lord bless you. Right? I'm going to be reading here in 3 minutes, one part of this book. You're going to see that the cave came back. Okay. It goes this way here. Before I finish. This is the last but one chapter. And initiating that evening enjoyable gospel-centered conversation, Zebedee's wife reverently asked Jesus, Lord, how will our journey to the divine kingdom happen? Christ appeared to concentrate for a few moments and explained. In a valley, in a far-off country, there were a number of Jews who were blind from birth, accustomed to darkness and poverty. They had lived for many years in their cave. So how come that this guy, through Francisco, is regaining a thought of the allegory of the cave and being born there? When an enlightened brother of their race came along and told them about the profound beauty of Mount Zion in Jerusalem, outside the cave, where the chosen people worship the Supreme Father. After listening to his story, all the blind people were greatly upset and lamented their impossible situation. Their seer friend, however, explained to them that their situation was not hopeless. If they had the courage to apply themselves to certain disciplines, and if they abstained from the various lower nature pleasures to which they had grown accustomed in the dark, they would be able to regain contact with light and go to the holy city. Keep with me, it's one page here. Most of his listeners viewed his suggestions with obvious sarcasm, asserting that their parents and their ancestors had also been blind, and that was impossible for them to regain the use of their eyes. One of them, however, a brave and serene young man, believed in the recommended method and put it to use. He began devoting himself to the required discipline while in the cave. And after 4 years of meditation, hard work, and personal obedience to the law, along with fasting, not eating, and prayer, he received his sight. He almost went out of his mind with joy. In ecstasy, he told his companions about the sublimity of the experience, commenting on the spaciousness of the sky and the beauty of nearby trees, but no one believed them. Even though everyone thought he was crazy, the young man didn't get discouraged. He was now to make out the path and would be able to progress on his way. He left the deep valley, the cave. Right? But without any notion of directions, he wandered around for days and nights in a troubled state. Set upon by great numbers of wolves, vipers, like snakes, he saw how inexperienced he was, so he exercised the greatest caution until one morning, in order to gather wild honey, he approached the hiding place carved out in the rock and was held up, robbed by a thief who demanded him to hand over his money back. But since he had no money, he agreed to be slaved by the malefactor, who for 5 years long kept him in incessant work. However, he acted with such a kindness and demonstrated so much selflessness that his persecutor changed and became mellower, softer in character and behavior, converting to the good. He gave him back his freedom. Freed once again, the faithful believer started out once more because the desire to reach the divine temple filled his mind. He started out distributing fraternity and happiness to all travelers who crossed the path. But upon reaching a small village where the law was enforced with excessive severity, he was arrested as an unknown criminal, knowing that he would be betrayed by his lack of strength if he tried to escape. He let them lock him up and the problem could be resolved, which in fact took a long time. Nonetheless, he was never inactive in exercising the good. In the very jail that had wounded his innocence, he found numerous textbooks, tools, to demonstrate goodwill, love, and tolerance. The authorities were really impressed and finally set him free. The desire to reach the sublime sanctuary absorbed his thoughts, and he continued on his way. But only after 20 years of struggle and trial, over which he was always victorious, so this is my podcast, still more, was he able to reach the Mount Zion in order to worship the Supreme Lord. The Master paused, glanced around the silent room, and concluded, such is the journey to the heaven kingdom. Thank you so much. If you have any question.
Very good, Carlos. Excellent talk. Inspiring and motivating, I think.
Any question? There is a philosopher called Heidegger that says when the experience is so big, it is so extraordinary,